And again, I want to thank you to Education is the Best Medicine. Welcome to our uh, segment for Education is the Best Medicine, and hosted by Isaac Conscious Soul. I want to thank everyone for participating, and we're going to ask for more of your participation. We're going to be doing some surveys about, healthcare systems, and going to ask that you participate. We think it's really important to get a discussion going about, what we want to consider as alternative systems of care. And what I mean by that is that I think traditionally the systems of care that particularly African Americans have been exposed to and had to experience have not been helpful to them. If anything, it's tended to shorten their lives just in navigating the healthcare system. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about is the fact that working with a number of groups, but in particular, Conscious Voices, being set up by Cheryl Crawford, excuse me, and she is the architect of the organization. So happy to be partnering with her, and we'll be discussing more. We're going to have her come on along with a lot of my members of the leadership team to discuss our what we believe to be a pathway forward and one of the solutions to the not only the issue of access for quality care in the African American community. So stay tuned to that. Wanted to kind of say a few things going on. Again, the elections. I'm glad everyone voted. Appreciate you for voting. I think that voting is our best avenue to deal with what we can in the system that really hasn't felt as though it needs to listen to our needs and wants and concerns. Um, and we can only do better uh, by engaging in this system and again maximizing it. I think we got one more Senate race out there, Warnock versus Walker, and um, just listen to what both candidates are saying, and make your own judgments, and you know, um, you just have to. You have to become involved. You have to become part of the process. Again, I want to thank RTV, thank Believe Radio, Etymology for sponsoring us. And I want to thank the community. I think we have to have a myriad of voices in the community now, having discussions about what we consider to be our most pressing concerns. Um, Want to talk a little bit about some interesting information that I've come across, and in regards to, I follow stuff like Doctor Radio on SiriusXM, and kind of a lot of the things I look at, I believe, have a pulse beat in the community. So that's why I talk about them. Interesting enough, Cleveland Clinic, which is a renowned research institution in back in the Midwest, uh, I heard about this study on a cardiology program at Sirius Radio. It says that, and I looked it up. It says Cleveland Clinic trials 6 widely used dietary supplements do not lower cholesterol compared with either a low dose statin or a placebo. Kind of big words, right? So, go get cholesterol. Why we worry cholesterol? Because it's one of the major components of coronary artery slash vascular disease, in which these cholesterol molecules block the vasculature, creating a condition called, first of all, it creates a blockage, which decreases blood flow to the brain, eyes, heart, kidney, larger organs system wise. Secondly, it is a major component in the risk of heart attack and stroke. And thereby we monitor cholesterol, bad carrying cholesterol, LDL, and hopefully raise the better carrying cholesterol, HDL, and lower the LDL. Um, and there's some more nuances to the cholesterol game, but Suffices to say, this is why we've got people taking drugs called statins, which lower the cholesterol. Now, what it said was that they studied the Cleveland Clinic. They studied like 6 commonly known um, supplements for lowering cholesterol in the common literature. So, an example, from my historical perspective, a lot of my patients say, well, I take supplements because they lower my cholesterol and they decrease the inflammation, and they're just healthier than taking those drugs called statins. And again, let me point you to the article that says supplements did not lower uh, the 6 widely used supplements uh, did not lower cholesterol compared with either a low dose statin or a placebo, which means either you took the low dose statin or the placebo, it was you had just about you had a better effect than you would using just the supplements. And the 6 supplements they studied were fish oil, garlic, cinnamon, turmeric, plant sterols, and red uh, yeast rice. I'll repeat those again: fish oil, garlic, cinnamon, turmeric, plant steroids, and red yeast rice. Now, why do I bring this up? Because when I first started practicing, the supplement industry was a $5 billion industry, unregulated, and again, not studied. And that's what they tell you on the box when you pick up supplements: unregulated, unstudied. In other words, if there's an adverse outcome to this particular item, it wasn't supposed to be used for a medical condition anyway. So that being said, this they did a study called SPORT, SPORT. It says the supplements, placebos, rovastatin study. So rovastatin is a type of cholesterol drug. That's what they used in the study. Were presented. So this was presented. It says the results from the supplement, placebo, rovastatin study, or SPORT, were presented during a late-breaking science section in the American Heart Association. So in 22. So this is the most recent study in this year. It says that so the study physician Luke Laffin says if you're taking over the counter supplements for heart health or to lower cholesterol, you should reconsider. Now I'm gonna read that again. It says if you're looking to over the counter supplements for heart health or for cholesterol lowering, you should reconsider. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I have a number of my clients, and again, as we move more to the intersection of medicine and mental health, that there are mental health issues that need to be addressed medically, and medical issues need to be addressed from a mental health standpoint. We need to understand that a number of things that will mess with that medical pot you have to account for. So, and 25 years ago, I didn't have any discussions on supplements. There wasn't enough things studied about. You couldn't say whether they were good or bad. Uh, and again, if you are watching any TV program of any level, you see some of these major athletes supportive of supplementation and how it's improved their life and improved your sex life and all that kind of good stuff. Well, again, here's what they said. This was just about cholesterol medicines, but I think you have to look at the larger picture of why these supplements are being pushed in communities and why people take them. One, because they want to have control over their health. They want to have control over what they're putting in their bodies, and they figure supplements are healthy, ergo, we should take them. But again, not studied, and no evidence to support the use of supplements in general. And when they studied these 6 supplements that are well known for supposedly lowering cholesterol, they were found. Again, the lead author said this is something people need to reconsider. They said, unfortunately, many U.S. consumers believe cholesterol health supplements are safer than prescription medications. I said that. And believe supplements are as effective or more effective than statins. And this is just one aspect of it. Again, I've been practicing for almost 35 years. When I first started practicing, the supplement industry was a $5 to $7 billion, I think. Again, unregulated. And I will again repeat that now it is maybe a $50 billion industry. Again, the only thing that's changed is not unregulated. Um, so, what are we talking about? Uh, so, uh, elevated low density lipoprotein or LDL, that's the bad carrying cholesterol. I always used to tell my patients, we want to keep your low or bad carrying cholesterol low and your good or HDL cholesterol high. You want to keep your low low and your high high. Even if you didn't know anything about that, we know that LDL is the lethal cholesterol, along with a couple of others now we're starting to find out. It says, so elevated low density lipoprotein, again, protein wrapped around a fat molecule, also known as the bad cholesterol, is a major cause of coronary artery disease in my intro. LDL cholesterol causes the buildup of fatty deposits within the arteries, reducing or blocking the flow of blood and oxygen. So this is a plumbing problem. When we have elevated cholesterol, elevated sugar, elevated salt, so the sugar and the salt kind of change the diameter and the patency of the vasculature in the brain, the eyes, the heart, the kidney, the penis, the lower legs. You then have the cholesterol that blocks that, preventing blood flow to those vital organs, right? So guess what? When you block blood to vital organs, they die, thereby heart attack, stroke, blindness, kidney failure, erectile dysfunction, peripheral vascular disease. Um, so this was a single-center, prospective, randomized, single-blind clinical trial research study. So in other words, you don't know whether you're getting the cholesterol product or one of these types of supplements or placebo, which means nothing. It's like a famous sugar pill, right? So they did this as that kind of study. It says none of the dietary supplements demonstrated any significant decrease in the LDL or the lower cholesterol, lower the LDL cholesterol compared with placebo. Rovastatin also had a beneficial impact on blood triglycerides and total cholesterol, which helped reduce cardiovascular risk. Now, again, when you're taking a medicine, you want the benefits to outweigh the risk, and you want it to do its intended aim, in this case, to lower your bad cholesterol and set up a situation where if you can lower other types of fats in the blood, triglycerides, then it goes far toward reducing your risk of heart attack and stroke, which is why you're taking it in the first place, given the fact that when people are taking this, they're trying to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease in terms of heart attack and stroke. That's why. And it said the average cholesterol reduction after 28 days was about 37% among the folks that took it, the statin. While changes in bad carrying cholesterol, while changes in the LDL cholesterol levels among those who took any of the dietary supplements were similar to those in the placebo group. So participants in the statin group had an average of 24% decrease in total cholesterol, while both the placebo group and the dietary supplement showed no benefit. So again, risk versus benefit. The study showed in those folks that did take a low dose statin, they had at least a 24% decrease in the total cholesterol. And so that means if you're a borderline cholesterol person, you take that drug and it lowers your cholesterol to a lower level, that's beneficial. If you take these supplements or you don't take anything, then your risk, you don't have any benefit. If anything, your cholesterol will stay the same or go up. And again, this includes discussion around plant-based diet, exercise, reducing sugar, just not one thing. But in that, what they studied in terms of supplements, again, you know, I can't say some of the names, but the ones that start with garlic and it didn't work. It wasn't effective. If anything, when you're taking something like that, the benefits, the risks outweigh the benefits because what they don't include is are you getting the supplement from the same source? Again, if it's unregulated, and we're seeing this now that when you taking out some of these supplements, they don't have what's in them. They don't have what they say it's supposed to be in them, and what you need to have in them is not there, or there in enough quantities to be effective. Again, let the buyer beware. It says, here's the thing that got me. Again, I said when I first started practicing, dietary supplements were $8 billion. Here in this article, it says that dietary supplement sales have estimated nearly 50 billion annually on the United States, and many supplements are marketed as natural alternatives for heart protection. Again, this was the discussion of the use of a drug to lower one's cholesterol. But I think you can expand that discussion to any of these supplements in which there's no proven benefit to them, no scientific study to them. There's a real big thing in vitamin D and if we should be taking it or not, because of some folks in bone health are saying, may not be the case. But again, most folks say if the vitamin D level is lower, you want to get it up there. But again, is there a benefit? We're going to find out because a lot of us have been taking it, me included. Um, Dietary supplements are estimated to be 50 billion annually in the United States, and many supplements are marketed as natural alternatives for heart protection and cholesterol management. The senior author of the study, Steve Nissen, he's an academic officer of Heart and Vascular of Cleveland, said, for the management of high cholesterol, supplements are often used by patients in place of statins. In the absence of high quality data, this represents a major public health concern. Why is that important? Because the number one killer of Americans is still heart disease. Heart attacks and strokes and vascular adverse outcomes from hypertension, from aortic aneurysms. The whole issue that discusses around elevated cholesterol levels as well as blood pressure is one of the most dynamic healthcare issues we have ongoing and has been for the last 30 years, 35 years of my practice. Again, Americans look for a quick fix. It's not there. That being said, another discussion that came up. Again, these are kind of things that kind of interest me. I know most people go to when they see the provider before COVID, and they would get their pulse oxes tested. And that's kind of like a percentage of oxygen. If it's too low, then people are concerned that you might not be having enough oxygen to perfuse your lungs and vessels. And it's used a lot when folks have lung diseases like COPD, cancer, asthma, and it's just a general check for folks as we age. Here's what came up. It says pulse oximeters less accurate for dark-skinned people. Ain't that a kick in the head? So the pulse oximeter that you've been using for the last umpteen years does not give the appropriate value for a dark-skinned person. I would say African American, the 1619 Project, but definitely dark-skinned people. It says that why does it matter? This expert panel consensus that inaccuracies pose a distinct clinical risk for dark-skinned patients and set the stage for the FDA to first scrutinize manufacturing standards for the device, which means which measure oxygen levels in the blood. Now, here's the discussion. If you don't have a baseline for other communities besides the white, fair-skinned person, then you have an issue. I dare say that the problem with the Elizabeth Holmes and the Thoros one drop of blood, not only did it didn't work, it probably couldn't even manage to. If it wasn't working for the general population, it would definitely be an issue for people of color on seeing that we seem to be undervalued in so many things. Um, And so the driving news of this is that it followed long-standing concerns that were brought to people during COVID. Again, the face of COVID rears its head again. In the pandemic, the oximeters were widely used in home and in clinical settings. So here's an item that we're thinking that is recording the O2 levels in the blood vis-a-vis a really cheap test of all folks the same way, but it wasn't. And it's kind of interesting what they just decided. It says a 2020 article in the New England Mirror Journal stated that black patients were nearly 3 times more likely than white patients to have low oxygen levels that go undetected. So this, how does it see that visually? African American person of color calls, says I can't breathe, I can't breathe. I got my pulse oximeter. What's your pulse oximeter? Says it's normal. Oh, you must be normal. That's when history becomes an issue, and you have to kind of move past the device and understand what the person is saying. You treat the person, not the device, not the lab value. September analysis in Southern Health found that black COVID patients had faced up to 5 hours in treatment days due to inaccurate readings. So again, quality care, delayed care, and people die. That's what they don't say. That people die because of inaccurate readings in during the COVID epidemic because the pulse oximeters were being recorded accurately. How much have you heard about that? When was the newscast saying that, gee, we need to look at, you need to talk to your provider about pulse oximeters because they don't record, at least in African Americans, at least people of black hued skin, proper oxygen levels. Why is that? How did they measure? How did they develop these machines so that, and when you find the inaccuracy, how come you can't correct it? I would draw the analogy between these you need to use facial profiling and IDing in airports and in general. They found always these inaccuracies, and people of color were always identified as the enemy for some reason. It says the panel was split over recommendations. Isn't that interesting? When we have a problem with people of color, there's always a problem about what to do. So what they said was unresolved issues include how to categorize and report skin pigmentation data, or what is the accuracy of percentage of pulse oximeters, and how should they be. In other words, if you're a person of color and you go up and get a pulse oximeter test, what's the standard for that person's respiratory um, issue? Because you must not have a standard for African Americans since it's always being read lower. So this machine, so who's the standard you're using? You're using young white male? You're using a young white female? You're using, what are you using? Anyway, um, it says, what are they saying? There needs to be transparency around it. How much inaccuracy is permissible? I'm not sure there's a right answer. The panel chair, Steve Nathan, the medical director of Innovant's Advanced Lung Disease and Lung Transplant Program. And it says that a panel member said, Vice Chair General Child, changes need to cover over-the-counter oximeters, which consumers use as an in-home medical alert. But the discussion is, why is there a difference between people of color and other groups in terms of these pulse oximeter readings? They didn't have a standard for everybody. They only had a standard for one, and that's what we've been using. This is where medical and institutional structural racism come in, because no one ever thought about it until that person's in the room destroying patient flow because they're short of breath and no one believes them because the machine says they shouldn't have any problems. Um, I want to again say thank you for tuning in to Education of Best Medicine, hosted by the Alex Conscious Show. I want to thank RTV, I Believe Radio. Curtis, thank you in the back, man. Always here, always consistent, help me out. Appreciate it. You don't do these things by yourself. It's a community. And one of the things that's missing out of medicine, I believe, is community. I think people want to go do their jobs and leave, but I live and work in the community, and I see the homelessness. I see the attacks on people of color. I see the lack of services and lack of access to lack of access to quality services, and for a long time it was our fault. You know, again, when you start peeling back the layers of these things, it's, some of it is our fault. I'll take responsibility for the things I need to take responsibility for, but not all the time. Um, Again, um, this is a national diabetes month. And some of the things that came up, I was reviewing the literature, and I want to see if I can pull it up. Was that the American Diabetes Association has launched some really cool, how can I say that? Some really cool platforms, and let's see, and I think that um, what I'm excited about is that let's see, pull up here. Um, is that you can go to the platform, American Diabetes Association, um, and do some self care. They really emphasizing foot care. And I wanted to bring up the some of the data they brought in because they want you to go to the site and start to interface with some of the things that they're doing. And I thought it was kind of interesting. So let me see if I can pull some things up here. Um, and it's more a discussion about empowering patients and getting people to be proactive as opposed to being reactive. Let's see. Okay, and it's here. Um, it's again easy site to navigate. So the recent discussions um, are how to Thanksgiving with diabetes, right? So and one of the things that we have to start, I think that people have to start working with is um, how best can I manage myself with any of these chronic conditions? What do I need to do? What questions do I need to understand when going to my provider? Definitely. Um, so the first one was like amputation um, discussion. It says disrupt the curve of amputations. Today in the United States, a person with diabetes has a limb amputated every 3 minutes. So every 3 minutes, some person with diabetes, due to lack of blood sugar control, ulcer, just unluck of the draw. I always said that folks with diabetic ulcers had a greater risk of having their foot amputated than a person that was in a car accident that injured his foot with a wound. Always my diabetics. And so I think that, if you're thinking around those lines, they even have, again, made some cultural distinctions around amputations and health inequities. It says that indigenous people, I guess Native American, those folks are likely to suffer a diabetic related amputation. They're 2 times more likely. Blacks, again, not distinguishing between African Americans, but blacks are up to 4 times as likely to suffer amputation than non-Hispanic whites. The Latina X community is 1.5 times more at risk. These are numbers that are astounding. These are um, uh, morbidity and in some cases mortality because what I found is when folks started getting amputations, it started at the bottom of the foot, then it started to just travel up. You know, and I want to give a real special shout out to one of my elders who's passed, who I was taking care of, and end up having bilateral amputations of his knees, below the knee. Was able to manage and maintenance, but it was just a real caregiving joy for his wife, a real caregiving joy for his family, and a level of activity was lost with him. He still preached on a Sunday going basis, but again, a level of activity was lost up until he passed. And so one of the things they also stress is peripheral vascular disease. And again, peripheral vascular disease is the precursor or poor blood flow, again, from, guess what? Diabetes. Guess what? Coronary artery disease, elevated cholesterol, that decrease blood flow to the extremity, in particular the foot. And what happens is with that decreased blood flow, then the body's tissues start to break down. And what I tell people is not only do you miss oxygen going to the tissues, you miss the waste products being taken away. So it creates a dynamic where the skin breakdown, ultimately ulcer, and ultimately amputation if not addressed. That's again why the foot exams are so important. Monthly self exams are important. Good fitting shoes. Again, follow with your podiatrist. Again, diabetes month. Let's keep it moving. And it's again, we want to reduce the amount of amputation. We want to reduce the amount of trauma. Again, it's an issue. Um, Big thing with dental care. Um, One of the discussions around now is that World Health Organization just launched these major issues around dental care. Boy, I need and the fact that because of COVID, we're not going to the dentist. We haven't gone to the dentist. Everything is because of COVID. People are scared of the dentist. People don't like dental care. People don't like injections and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, a large number of my patients that are diabetic have poor dental care, which is they remember. Think about it. If you have poor dental care, you can't eat properly. You can't eat properly. You can't provide yourself with proper nutrients, and then you have skin or tissue breakdown. Precursor to amputations if ever I see one. And that's in real practice. That's what you see. Um, and so they had a pre-diabetes test, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So I took the test. What it showed was I was at low risk, but low risk doesn't mean you can't um, get diabetes. It just means that the risk factors that all come together that make you more at risk for diabetes are more prevalent. Again, the primary diabetic issue is diabetes type 2. Um, so again, Thanksgiving, and what they're suggesting is that uh, they have a handbook out, American Diabetes Association. So heal thyself by educating thyself. If you educate yourself, you can heal yourself. Because I always say is that what I have found is people doing things that their parents did. I remember one patient, he used basically a fat back product to treat his foot ulcer. Didn't work, but he did it because that's what he had learned from his parents, who both had amputations at the end of their diabetic lives. Um, so we have a lot to do. We have a lot of work to do. Um, Again, this is November, discussion of diabetes, COPD, um, and um, antibiotic overuse. And so, again, Get your toolkit out, learn a little bit more, do some things differently. You know, limit the portions. Cook fresh. Everybody's doing process. And enjoy the season with folks. It doesn't necessarily have to be around food. It doesn't have to be around what you're wearing. It doesn't have to necessarily be around, you know, have a holiday that kind of speaks to kind of love and understanding and acceptance. I want to thank my sister, by the way. She's waiting for her flowers. Sis, I haven't forgot you. Okay. Been busy. Um, I want to thank the Conscious Voices work group. We met this morning. Excellent discussions around healthcare advocacy and systems care, and making some more progress with that. Trying to do things differently. Um, I think that we all can do better this year. It's going to be a challenging couple of years as things change and we finally see how people are going to function. Um, it's going to be very interesting how a lot of the political issues are going to play out. It's going to be gridlock in the U.S. Capitol, it looks like, because you're going to have a split um, in the congressional body. I want to thank Nancy Pelosi for her work and her right on time, being a strong woman that she is, and wish her and her husband the best. What kind of person comes to your home and tries to beat you in the head with a hammer, and then looks for your wife? That's a real outstanding American, I tell you. Who's pleaded not guilty? Man, I tell you. I think he's there here on a broken visa too. So talk about the immigration system. Talk about who they're looking for. They weren't looking for him. They're looking for Hispanic, Haitian, uh, Asian. That's what they're looking for in terms of immigration. They're not looking for folks like him who come in and overstay their visa and don't even get called on it. So while they're trying to separate babies from their mothers, right? Come on. Um, COVID changed a lot of our healthcare access. So as I'm reviewing literature, I'm constantly understanding the impact of COVID on access, on healthcare provider burnout. That's what we're seeing now. As this, I ask you, please listen to me. Right? There is going to be a resurgence of COVID. We're already seeing this retic sentinel virus. It's affecting kids and influenza, and folks aren't vaccinated. That's the key. Folks aren't vaccinated, and what I suggest is folks understand that you're really wearing the mask and vaccinating for the babies that have not been vaccinated. We just lost a baby recently in California over this RSV issue, and again, folks are getting yelled for the holidays. They're traveling. They're at mask. Watch China. China still is in the middle of a lockdown. They're holding up a world economy because they don't want to vaccinate. And remember, if you don't vaccinate, all these viruses do is replicate and mutate, and they are able to avoid the treatments that we have. We're seeing a resurgence of polio, resurgence of measles again. Kids need to be vaccinated. We need to get everyone vaccinated that we can. It's a waste of time not to. Um, and again, this issue being proactive, um, and you can thrive with any of these illnesses. This is what the American Diabetes Association is talking about: thriving with the kind of issues in terms of medication, in terms of fitness, in terms of nutrition, in terms of getting involved, of course, and that's that's a little plug to go donate, right? Um, we have a wealth of services, we have a wealth of information that people need to utilize, and so that they can be better at managing their care and not letting their care manage them. I want to also bring up that please look up the CARE Act. I'm really trying to educate a lot of my younger male patients with mental challenges that the CARE Act is real. It's the CARE Act of California. And what it is it just basically says if you have a mental health challenge and you don't want to be treated, then you probably no longer will have a right to not be treated. And so I think that um, it's a part of a revisiting of mental health care, and again, people's need to access it. So, as I was being educated, the understanding is that these are great discussions. Laws are great, but you have to have the infrastructure in order to put these things in place. And if the discussion is just a bill, but no resources to make it happen, then we're just talking. And so for a long time, we've just been talking. Uh, and I think that that needs to stop. And I think it's encompassed on everyone to advocate for a systems change that benefits everyone and takes in the individuality and understand that people have challenges, and and work around that. Um, and I think that's so key. So if you're interested, it's the CARE Act, California, and what it says is uh, it says that the CARE Act creates a new pathway to deliver mental health and substance use disorder services to the most severely impaired Californians who often suffer in homelessness or incarceration without treatment. Now, that's what I want folks to kind of understand. I wish this was a very, we had that vision of having a better society group, that you envision these kinds of laws that will do that. Well, here's what it says. Again, it says uh, it provides service for most severely impaired Californians who too often suffer in homelessness or incarceration. I would submit to you that that costs the state, that the homeless camps cost the state, they cost the cities. A person's ability to refuse care and then become in that cycle of homelessness, incarceration, hospitalization costs the state. And my personal opinion is that the governor of the state cannot be president unless he cleans up the state. That's why I don't believe he's going to run for president, because his work is setting up this infrastructure that allows him to say that, look at this, look at California where I took over, and look at it now. And no one's arguing with this law. I've yet to see anyone have a discussion about this, about its impact, because it's the kind of thing that when something's going to happen and the dominant culture wants it to happen, then it happens. So that's why African Americans of the 1619 Project can't be racist, because racism implies power, and we don't have any power. So until we're able to direct our care and have our own African American centered healthcare system, at least a clinic in the Bay Area that feeds and deals with medical as well as psychiatric needs in one setting, and is about the total transformation of care for that group as opposed to just something that's cursory and temporary. And we'll talk more about the other kinds of choices that are out there and why I don't think that not only they're not effective, they may even be more harmful. Um, so this is called the Community Assistance Recovery Empowerment Act. The CARE Act creates a new pathway to deliver mental health care and substance use disorder services to the most severely impaired Californians who often suffer in homelessness or incarceration without treatment. The CARE Act moves care and support upstream, providing the most vulnerable Californians with access to critical behavioral health services, housing, and support. Sounds good, doesn't it? If we provide that population those things, I guarantee we can nip the homeless and mental health population issue in the bud, or really shrink it, because some people don't want care. I will admit that. It says that care recognizes that to serve those with the most complex behavioral health conditions, we must do hard work of prioritizing those who need help the most, providing a comprehensive care plan that honors self-determination to the greatest extent possible, and holding ourselves accountable to delivering services and housing that are key. This is the first time I've ever heard the inclusion in the healthcare issue around housing, because housing is fundamental. As I've always said, that I've had clients that I treated their ulcer, I treated their pneumonia, but they had to go back to a homeless environment. Guess where they returned to? The homeless returned to the ERs. So it cost the state a lot of money. I wish it was altruistic. The people want to do things because they're great and want to be great people. Not necessarily. Um, and I think that um, it's going to be again a discussion about not that this isn't the right thing to do. It's going to how it's going to be done and who's going to be doing. I submit to you that the reason why we don't have enough housing is because the state didn't want housing in only the areas that they wanted it in, and only people they wanted to have it. It's just like this whole thing with healthcare, and there was a really an issue before the Affordable Care Act that folks that didn't have insurance would impact folks that had insurance. So therefore, you know, why would you want to take care of them? It was crazy. It's the craziest thing I ever heard. But in reality, what happened was they ended up passing a law that said that the hospitals could not discharge people that they felt stable until they were stable, and they could transfer them to another level of care equal to theirs. So that's why the Affordable Care Act became so important, because it allowed situations where people could then get care and transfer over. But again, we lack the providers now. It's a systems issue of lack of capacity on both fronts, whether it be housing or healthcare. And the same things exist that if I don't want you to live in my area, I don't want to take care of you, then we don't get the care that we need to be beneficial. For a long time, there were no metrics about race in medicine. We all got treated the same. Well, not really. We know not to be true. Again, read the reparations paper, the white paper, preliminary white paper about housing, about healthcare. Go review them, because it paints a picture about why we could not get better and would not do better. It was designed for us to do better. Um, let's see here. I think also that we're reaching a stage now where again, people have to make choices, and how are we being treated? What's the balance in the system? Why is the country so divided? Why are we so divided? And that's a question that we all have to answer for ourselves. But for my own thought is that, you know, equality and balance and fairness means that we all have to lose a little. We can't have everything. You can't have a healthy society and not want it vaccinated. We still are dealing with long COVID, which is affecting a number of folks now. And the reason why it's affecting a number of folks is because we really still don't understand the disease yet. Again, it's only 3 or 4 years old now, maybe 5 years, I would say. And not studying it the way we're studying it because in a lot of primary care settings, these folks are long term chronic care. A 32-year-old with brain fog and fatigue, nah, he's faking. No, he could have COVID. He could have COVID twice. We're seeing it now. So um, I want to make sure folks understand that, again, this is the month of National Observance for Diabetes, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and antibiotic resistance. Um, and again, the discussion around COPD in women I think, is really, really, and for women of color, is really significant. It's, fast fact, you don't have to smoke in order to get COPD. You don't have, and again, but the smoking issue interfaces when people have COPD and they have lung cancer. Again, more prevalent in women now, more prevalent in women of color. Um, and again, I point to this as a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease in African American and European American women, death, mortality, and utilization. Um, and the abstract says that the impact of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is increasing in U.S. women in 2008 to 2010, an estimated 7.9 million women were living with COPD. Chronic lower respiratory disease was the third leading cause of death in 2010 and was a major cause of disability, morbidity, uh, morbidity, and mortality. Its economic and social burden in both in substantial increasing in the U.S. The annual number in COPD deaths is now higher in women than in men. Imagine that. Imagine that now that women are getting more COPD cases than men. Some of the issues are smoking, access, um, poor diets, lack of exercise, genetics, partner that smoked. Says there's a high prevalence of COPD found among African American women who never smoked. This is an article again by Dr. Patricia Silva, December 13, 2016. I want to thank you for providing this article. Excellent. It says women who have never smoked are still vulnerable to develop chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. African American women are especially susceptible to the disease. Researchers at the University of Toronto found out. The resulting study, COPD in population-based sample of never smokers, interactions among sex, gender, and race, were published in the International Journal of Chronic Diseases. COPD is the third leading cause of death in the United States and a main cause of disability, with smoking being considered the largest single risk factor for COPD. But don't forget genetics, don't forget environment, don't forget institutional structural racism. Because smoking rates are decreasing. It was just a recent article that said that they did CT scans or MRIs of African Americans, and it noted that folks that they were subjected, exposed to racism, brains were more and more of a pathology to them. Which means racism, thinking about it makes you sick. Says there's an increased need to identify among never smoker groups that are a high risk for developing COPD. The researcher performed an observational epidemiological study to examine sex, gender, and racial differences in COPD among never smokers. Remember, I said never smokers. I told you that the number risk factor in COPD was smoking, but you don't have to smoke in order to get COPD. So the researchers retrieved data from about 2012 and this is- and, and looked at the CDC behavioral risk factor surveillance system of 129,000 non-Hispanic whites and 50 years or older who had never smoked. Overall, 8,674 African American women, uh, 2,000 almost 3,000 men, and 80,000 white women, and 37,000 men. I only put that data in to say that though they say African American women, the study samples were pretty small. But comparatively, we have a smaller race, 10% of the American population, so kind of makes sense that these numbers would probably be higher because we're a smaller percentage of the American population. It sounds researchers found that women have significantly higher likelihood of developing COPD than men. Specifically, data show that African American women have the highest prevalence of COPD, followed by white women, white men, and wow, African American men were last. And I don't know how that is because the men of color I knew smoked a lot, but they were getting lung cancer. You know, some of the women's greater vulnerability for COPD had to be due with physiological differences. When we look into account and they used the average lung size, the odds of COPD among women compared to men less elevated. However, we still found women approximately 50% higher odds of COPD. It's just the literature I've been reading. Women are more risk, they're at higher risk than you would think for their cohorts. And it affects them in terms of mortality, uh, uh, death, and mobility illness. I said that, and they made adjustments for height and education and all these things. It says hormones play a role. In addition, women were more likely to have been exposed to secondhand smoke from spouses who smoke. And again, hormones and secondhand exposure. When adjusted, the data for socioeconomic positions, black and white women found to be comparatively higher odds of COPD. So again, sickness is an issue about how your lifestyle is, your quality of life, all that. Since African American women had by far the highest prevalence of COPD among older adults who had never smoked. We found that adjusting for income and education levels, the odds of COPD among African American women compared to white women declined by more than half. We cannot determine causality with this data set, but poverty associated with increased exposure to toxins and secondhand smoke in workplaces, air pollution in inner cities. So not only was being a black person at making it risk where you live, what you inhale, your environment, just the environment makes you sick. So makes sense, doesn't freeways going, particularly in Oakland, in my community, going right through communities, freeways, right? Anyway, what's the importance of that? Because CO2 uh, car emissions are a primary cause of global warming. And if you're emitting those kinds of discharges throughout a community, that's why we have more asthma, more respiratory problems, more cancer, all that. More heart disease, definitely more heart disease. You know, and if you go to a system that's not looking for it, don't think you can sit, think you're coming in there just to get, pain medicines or whatever, then you miss the boat. Structural and institutional racism affect our care. And again, we talked about it last time, but antibiotic resistance, and I'm bringing this up because we're in a viral syndrome now. Influenza, um, COVID, bacterial signal virus in babies. And so, and as I said before, as I'll say it again, antibiotics do not work on viruses. Man, the time has just went. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We talked about the supplement study. Um, we reviewed um, the sports study, SPORT. You can look it up. Sport in Cleveland Clinic. Uh, Again, supplements just at least in cholesterol don't work. I would challenge you to look for other areas where you're taking something there's no science behind it, outside of what your great great grandma did or what my mother did. And, I want to thank her for putting that little pot of castor oil and lemon with tea and honey on that. I can see it now on the stove, and me sipping a little bit of it as I came in, and just feeling absolutely better. Maybe not because it was anything, because my mom had done it. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank Believe Radio and RTV and Eyes the Conscious Soul for supporting us. I want to thank my YouTube and Facebook family for tuning in. And thank you. Please comment. Love you all. Um, Again, I want to thank the Conscious Voices Work Group. I want to thank one of my best mentors in the world, Rosalind. Thanks, Rosalind, for being who you are. Uh, Again, I want to thank the community for lending its ear, and look forward to some things we're going to want to do and be a part of as we move this whole healthcare access issue and quality issue and cultural and systemic racism issue and trauma issue forward to a new light and day. Again, thanks for tuning in and look forward to talking with you. I think it's Miss Howard next week, but if not, I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye. Kayla, thank you. Happy birthday.